Good morning, and welcome to another day in Lent. Today is day 10 in Lent, and I'm so glad that you could be here with me. I'm that nerdy Catholic, and I'm glad that you could join me today. Last Saturday, I made a video welcoming Lizzie from Lizzie's Answers home to the Catholic Church, and I wanted to share some things with her as she was preparing for her confirmation this coming Easter. I wanted to encourage her in this time of Lent, in this time of preparation, and I wanted to share some of my own experiences going through Lent and some of my own experiences in the Easter Vigil for my confirmation. And it got me thinking more about my own confirmation. And so every Saturday through Lent, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about my story and how I came into the Catholic Church. If you're just curious about what the Catholic Church is about and what she teaches, I hope my story can be an encouragement to you. And I encourage you to look more into the Catholic Church. Find some things to read. The first two books that I read as I was looking into the Catholic Church were Catholic Christianity by Peter Kreeft and By What Authority by Mark Shea. Those were two very helpful books to me, and so I encourage you, find those books and read through them and see if they help you see the Catholic Church in a new light. The first event that began to open my heart to the Catholic Church wasn't a Catholic event at all. In college, I went on a cross-cultural trip to England, and while we were staying in London, we went to a service at Westminster Abbey. And so as I was sitting there, praying, singing the hymns, listening to the Word of God, I felt a connection to the past that I had never felt before. I sat there and realized that people had been worshiping in that place and in that same way for almost 400 years. And it struck me, that connection to the past, and it really hit me. And I had never thought about my personal connection to the past before. I'd never thought about a church that went on for that long. I'd never thought about the Catholic Church going back 2,000 years. And so for me at the time, going back 400 years was a long time. And I really started to desire having that connection to the past. I wanted to experience a worship, and I wanted to have an experience in a church that didn't change. I began to desire that continuity. And so later, when I was back in the Boston area, I found an Episcopal church in Boston that had a high Anglican Mass, and I went to that. And I had that same experience, the same experience of being connected to the past, and that same experience of continuity, that same experience of being part of something that hasn't changed. It started to help me realize that worship did not depend on me, that worship didn't even depend on how I was feeling. It didn't depend on the emotions of the moment. I still believe that emotions can play an important part in worship, and I still love it when I have a very strong emotional reaction at worship. And it was that continuity, that lack of change, that helped me come to that realization. Around the same time as I was back in Boston and going to that service, I was also going to a Bible study at the Nondenominational Church that I was going to. And one of the two men that was leading the Bible study was a man named Tom, and he had grown up Catholic and left the church around 13 years old and was now going to this non-denominational church. He still had a few things that he loved from his Catholic upbringing, and he continued to hold on to. And he brought some of those things into our Bible study. He had his catechism, and he would bring in passages from his catechism every once in a while into our Bible study. He talked about St. Augustine. He talked about St. Francis and a couple of other saints that he really loved. And he was very clear that he was not a Catholic and he didn't want to be Catholic, but there were some things that he loved in the Catholic Church. And I always love how he said, I love some of these Catholic things. It's just too bad that they're in the Catholic Church. His understanding of the Catholic Church at the time was, I think, a common understanding of the Catholic Church, that Catholics don't worship or really know Jesus, that Catholics just do things to earn their way into heaven, that Catholics don't read their Bible, and that it's hard to be both a Christian and a Catholic. But he still had a love for some Catholic things, and so he brought them into our Bible study. And it was those things that he brought into our Bible study, into this non-denominational Bible study, that started me actually thinking about the Catholic Church. I had a few friends in my church at the time that grew up Catholic and left, but most of them had some sort of an affinity to something in their Catholic past. My friend Tom, it was his love of some of the saints. Another friend confided in me that she really missed the Mass and thought every once in a while that she would love to just go back and experience Mass. again, she said she didn't want to be Catholic again, but she wanted to experience the Mass. And so the first time that I ever went to Mass was with this friend of mine. We were at breakfast one morning, and I suggested to her that maybe we could go to Mass sometime together. And so we pulled out the yellow pages, looked through all the entries for Catholic churches, and I found one entry that had a really beautiful sketching of the front of the church. And I said, that looks like a beautiful church. Let's go there. So the next Sunday morning, I picked her up, and we went over to this Catholic church to go to Mass. Of course, we were good evangelicals, so we got there about 15 minutes early. That's what you do as an evangelical. You go to church early so you can talk to people, you can say hi, you can find a good seat, sit down, maybe spend a few minutes praying. And so we got there about 15 minutes early, and we sat down, and of course there was almost nobody there. And so I decided this would be a good time to just spend in quiet prayer. So we were praying, and this woman came out to us, and she introduced herself to us, and she asked us if we would like to present the gifts. And I looked at her with a kind of a quizzical look in my face, and I said, what's that? And so she said, in the middle of the Mass, I'll come up, I'll get you, bring you back, and then you will bring the bread and the wine up and present it to the priest. And I looked at her again, I said, but I'm not Catholic. She said, oh, don't worry, that's okay. And so my first time in Mass ever, I was presenting the gift. So looking back, I realized that this was a sign that God was leading me into the Catholic Church. It was the same parish a few years later that I was confirmed in, but we'll get to that later. So thank you for joining me again today. On Monday morning, we'll continue looking through John and walking closer to Jesus in this time of Lent. Next Saturday, I will continue the story of my journey into the Catholic Church. I hope my journey and my story is an encouragement to you. If you have any questions, if there's anything you would like for me to talk about as far as my journey, as far as the Gospel of John, or any questions that you have, please leave them in the comments below. And remember, any questions or comments you leave, please leave them charitably. Please don't attack anyone else. I want this to be a loving and fruitful conversation that you can have with me and that we can have with each other. You can watch another video up here. If you think I've earned it, please hit that subscribe button. Click that like button if you like this video, and I'll see you again on Monday. God bless.